right, Sports Talker Nation. Welcome back once again. It's your host, the G-Man, and here we are as we continue our 2015 NFL team-by-team review. Today we're going to talk about those Detroit Lions as we get to the middle of that first round of the draft. We're going to talk about what went well, what didn't go so well, and how they look moving forward. For me, it's the same old for the Detroit Lions. They paid for a quarterback that has every measurable skill in the world, yet doesn't win. Every year, they either start off like a house of fire and then collapse, or they start off terribly and come on at the end. They always wind up in that same middle road phase. I know they had a playoff season a couple of years ago, but in general, they're just a very consistently inconsistent team. I'm glad I'm not a Lions fan, because if I were a Lions fan, they would be aggravating. They would be maddening. Lord knows what they're going to do to you. What went right? Oh, it's so hard to figure. They're such a difficult team to figure out. There was nothing that consistently went right for them. There was about a 5-game stretch there where Matthew Stafford looked like your franchise quarterback that you're paying him to be. He's so strong-armed. When he decides not to just throw from that three-quarter angle, he's very accurate. But there's other times where he looks like he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a Jeep. Calvin Johnson is, as always, consistently excellent. I love him as a player. He's a class act. But again, you can't separate what went right from what went wrong with this team, because while it went right that he played incredibly well while he was in there, he's always hurt. And this year, he was more banged up than ever. He's a big guy. He takes a lot of hits. Their offensive line was better than you would think. Again, traditionally, terrible offensive line with Detroit, but they were okay. The big problem is that the running game, Amir Abdullah, flashes of brilliance, fumbled constantly. Joique Bell, now he's been cut, but when he played, he was exactly what you knew he was. He was consistent. He'd get you a few yards on the run. He caught the ball pretty well, didn't break a ton of tackles, and wasn't a game breaker. So Golden Tate, same deal. Golden Tate, when he got the ball, very good. He would disappear for stretches of both games and for games in a row where he wouldn't get the ball. Defensively, Ziggy Ansah is an absolute beast. They lost Ndamukong Suh, and you would have thought that would have destroyed their defense. It did not. Suh had a terrible year in Miami. Their defense actually played pretty well for stretches, and Ziggy Ansah is definitely going to do well for them. They played surprisingly well from a defensive back standpoint. They found some young kids that can actually play and are going to be pieces for them moving forward. So there's some defensive hope as you look forward. But what to do? Their offseason is going to be just a mix of problems. Losing Calvin Johnson is terrible. I understand he's only played 9 years. He's very beat up. And perhaps, he's just sick of playing for a team like Detroit, and he doesn't want to play for a loser anymore. You'd hate to think that happens, but you're selling out. You're giving as much as this guy does all the time. Why would you want to continue to do that for a team that you just have no chance of winning with? So replacing him is going to be important. They have to decide one way or another on Amir Abdullah. You got to give him the ball. I don't care if you send him to a psychotherapist. You let Tiki Barber come in and teach him how to hold the ball high and tight. Something has to be done with him. He has to learn how to play with the ball in his hands, because he's just too electric to let go. I guess you move Golden Tate into your primary receiving role. You absolutely need to draft a wide receiver. It's a deep receiver draft, if not incredibly top-heavy. So maybe in the middle rounds you draft that. You draft another corner to go with your already excellent corners, maybe an offensive lineman and an interior defensive lineman. They have some money now in free agency because, again, with Calvin giving some of that money back, they can actually spend it. You have to assume that Stafford's your guy, because otherwise it's a total gut and rebuild, and I don't think they're ready to do that. I'm not a huge Caldwell fan as the coach. I know he's very consistent and he doesn't get overly emotional, but he has that look on the sideline sometimes where he just doesn't understand what's happening in the game. And you can't play it too conservatively, and I can't stand a conservative coach, and I think he is that. So that said, again, I think middle of the road was what happened this year. Middle of the road is what happens next year. They get lucky. Maybe they win 8-9 games, but that division is increasingly tough. Minnesota, Green Bay are both excellent. I think Tampa Bay is going to be improved. As Jameis continues to get older, I think they're going to do better. So I think they're stuck in that 6-9 or 6-10, 7-9 range, even if they have a spike in talent. So not much more to say about the Detroit Lions. They're going to continue to frustrate you, unfortunately. Maybe they'll turn the corner as we get closer to the turn of the century. But that's it for me, guys. I'm your host, the G-Man, and I am out.